I found him at a county kill shelter, huddled in the back of a cold, concrete kennel. They called him Zeus, a big name for a dog who looked so broken. He was a pit bull mix, brindle-coated with these deep, sad amber eyes and a few faint scars on his muzzle that told a story I thought I could rewrite. The shelter staff said he was surrendered for being too much dog, a vague warning I stupidly interpreted as a challenge. I saw a soul that needed saving, a project for my bleeding heart. I envisioned a future of park runs, lazy afternoons on the couch, and the quiet, loyal companionship I craved. When I signed the adoption papers, a wave of pride washed over me. I wasn't just getting a dog. I was giving a forgotten animal a second chance at life, a home filled with the love he so clearly deserved. I was his savior, or so I told myself. I spent a small fortune on the best food, a memory foam bed, and every durable chew toy imaginable. He was going to have the perfect life, a life that would erase whatever horrors he had endured before me. That first night, he slept on the floor by my bed, letting out soft sighs, and I felt a profound sense of purpose. I was doing something good, something truly meaningful.
For the first year, it was bliss. He was everything I had hoped for, and more. Zeus was a goofy, slobbery mess who would greet me at the door with a full-body wiggle, his tail thumping so hard against the wall I worried about the drywall. He was my shadow, following me from room to room, resting his heavy head on my lap as I watched TV. We had our routine, a long morning hike, a lazy afternoon, and evening cuddles. My friends loved him, calling him a gentle giant, a teddy bear. I conveniently ignored the small, fleeting signs that something was amiss. The low, guttural growl that would rumble in his chest when the mailman came to the door. The way his body would go completely rigid if another dog got too close to his favorite ball at the park. The time he stared, unblinking and unnervingly still, at a crying toddler across the street. I wrote it all off as protectiveness or resource guarding. I'd tell myself he's just being a dog, or his past makes him anxious. I was so invested in the narrative of his redemption that I refused to see the warnings. I was the loving owner who had healed him, and any behavior to the contrary was simply a small, lingering echo of a past that no longer defined him.
The first real crack in my perfect fantasy happened about 18 months in. My sister came to visit with her new boyfriend. Zeus had met my sister before and adored her, but he had never met a new man in his house. The moment the boyfriend walked in, Zeus transformed. His body went low and stiff, a deep, menacing growl erupting from his core that I had never heard before. It wasn't a warning, it was a threat. I grabbed his collar, my heart pounding, laughing it off nervously. "He's just being protective of his girls," I said, my voice shaking slightly. But for the rest of the evening, Zeus never took his eyes off the boyfriend, tracking his every move with an intensity that was chilling. Later, when the boyfriend got up to use the restroom, Zeus lunged, snapping the air just inches from his hand. I screamed and pulled him back, locking him in my bedroom for the rest of the night. I was horrified and embarrassed, but my first thought was still to defend him. I convinced myself it was my fault that I hadn't socialized him properly with new men. I doubled down, determined to fix this flaw, completely blind to the fact that I wasn't in control. I was just an accomplice to a ticking time bomb.
The day it happened was unremarkable. A Tuesday. It was raining outside, so our morning hike was canceled. We were just hanging out in the living room. I was on the floor, sorting through some old mail, and Zeus was chewing on a bone a few feet away. I tossed a junk mail flyer into the recycling bin next to him. I didn't touch him, I didn't touch his bone, I didn't even make a loud noise. But for some reason, that simple act of tossing a piece of paper was the trigger. I heard a low growl and looked up from the floor. The dog looking back at me was not my Zeus. His eyes were flat, black, and devoid of any recognition. His lips were peeled back over his teeth in a silent, terrifying snarl. His body was coiled like a spring. I froze, whispering, "Zeus, hey buddy, it's okay." I started to slowly push myself up, to create distance, and that's when he launched. There was no bark, no final warning, just a blur of brindle muscle and a sudden explosive impact as he hit my chest, knocking me flat on my back. The world narrowed to a vortex of pure, primal terror. This wasn't my dog. This was a predator, and I was its prey.
The next moments are a fragmented nightmare of sensory overload. The sheer weight of him on my chest, pinning me down with an impossible strength. The sound, a wet, tearing noise that I dimly registered was my own skin. The first bite was to my arm as I instinctively raised it to protect my face. I felt a sickening crunch as his jaws clamped down, the bone giving way with a snap that echoed in my skull. Pain, white-hot and absolute, erupted through my entire being. I screamed, a raw animal sound of agony and disbelief. He released my arm only to latch onto my shoulder, shaking his head back and forth like a wild animal trying to dismember a kill. I could feel the muscles and tendons tearing. I remember the smell, the coppery, metallic scent of my own blood filling the air, and the hot, rank smell of his breath on my face. His guttural roars were deafening, a sound of pure, unadulterated rage. I was looking into the eyes of the dog I loved, the dog I had saved, and seeing nothing but a vacant, murderous instinct. My brain couldn't reconcile the two realities. He was my sweet boy, and he was killing me.
I don't know how I survived. Adrenaline, maybe, or just dumb luck. He was on my neck, and I knew, with a horrifying certainty, that this was the end. My vision started to go dark at the edges. With a final, desperate surge of energy, I shoved my fingers into his eyes. He recoiled with a yelp of pain, giving me a split second. I scrambled, crawling and sliding through my own blood toward the heavy cast-iron fireplace poker. I have no memory of grabbing it, only of swinging it wildly. I connected with his head, and he stumbled back, stunned. It was enough. I lurched to my feet, somehow made it to the front door, and tumbled out onto my porch, screaming for help, before the world went black. I woke up to the frantic faces of paramedics, the wail of sirens, and the sight of animal control officers with a catch pole, carefully maneuvering a blood-soaked and disoriented Zeus into a van. The last thing I saw before they closed the doors was his face. For a fleeting second, his eyes looked soft and confused again, like the sad dog I had met in the shelter. That image haunts me more than the attack itself. The physical recovery was brutal.
multiple surgeries, skin grafts on my arm and shoulder, permanent nerve damage in my hand. I have a constellation of hideous scars that I have to look at every single day. But the psychological wounds are so much deeper. I was diagnosed with severe PTSD. For months, the sound of a dog barking would send me into a full-blown panic attack. I can't watch movies with dogs in them. The love and trust I had for animals, a core part of my identity, has been shattered and replaced with a deep, abiding fear. People try to rationalize it. You don't know what happened to him before you. It must have been something you did. But I know the truth. I looked into his eyes as he was trying to kill me. There was no reason, no provocation. There was just a switch that flipped. I poured my heart into saving an animal, and in return, he almost tore it out of my chest. I survived, but the naive, trusting person I was died on that living room floor, covered in blood, at the mercy of the creature I once called my best friend.
I acquired Milo when he was just an infant, a tiny, wrinkly thing wrapped in a blue blanket. He wasn't a dog or a cat. He was a chimpanzee. I was working at a private primate research facility that was downsizing, and Milo's mother had rejected him. He was going to be euthanized. I saw it as a sign, a unique opportunity. I had a large property, no children, and a misguided, arrogant belief that I understood him, that love and a human environment could bridge the gap between our species. So I took him home. For the first few years, it was a dream. I raised him like a human child. He wore diapers, then toddler clothes. He ate at the dinner table with his own tiny fork. I taught him dozens of words in sign language: drink, play, hug, love. He would wrap his long, surprisingly strong arms around my neck and press his face against mine. My friends were fascinated, if a little unnerved. They saw a wild animal in a t-shirt, but I saw my son. I corrected anyone who called him a pet or an animal. He's not an it, I'd say firmly. He's a he. He's Milo. I was so blinded by the novelty and the intense human-like affection he showed me that I completely ignored the fundamental truth of his nature. As Milo grew, so did his strength. What were once playful toddler tantrums became genuinely frightening displays of force. If he didn't get his way, he would throw things with incredible velocity and accuracy. He once ripped a solid oak cabinet door clean off its hinges because I wouldn't give him a second bottle of soda. I tried to discipline him like a human child, with timeouts and stern talks, but it was like trying to reason with a hurricane. There were moments of chilling realization, brief glimpses behind the curtain. The time he caught a bird in the backyard and with a calm, deliberate motion tore its head off, then looked at me and signed play. Or the way his expression would sometimes shift during a tickle fight, his playful grin morphing into a wide, toothy threat display that made the hair on my arms stand up. I should have seen the danger. Experts, friends, even my own family warned me that he was approaching adolescence, that his wild instincts would inevitably surface. But I was arrogant. I believed our bond was different, that my love had somehow tamed the millions of years of evolution coiled inside him. I thought I was his mother, his protector, but in reality, I was merely his keeper, and my time was running out.
The change accelerated when he turned 7. He became more possessive of me, more aggressive toward any visitors, especially men. His strength was astounding. He could move furniture I couldn't budge and would often greet me with hugs that felt more like constrictions, leaving bruises on my arms. The playful, childlike dependency was replaced by a simmering, challenging dominance. He started testing boundaries in ways that were terrifying. He would stand on his hind legs, puffing out his chest and letting out loud, booming pant hoots if I tried to leave the house without him. I started to feel like a prisoner in my own home, catering to his moods to keep the peace. The aversive behaviors I tried, like using a spray bottle, only seemed to enrage him further. I was living with a creature that had the emotional maturity of a toddler and the physical strength of 5 grown men. I was deeply, profoundly afraid, but I was also trapped by my own narrative. How could I admit I had made a catastrophic mistake? How could I give up on my son? So I isolated us further, telling friends it was just a difficult phase, all the while knowing deep down that I was living with a loaded gun. The day it all came crashing down, a friend, Sarah, had stopped by to drop something off. I told her to stay in her car, that Milo was in a mood, but she insisted on just saying a quick hello at the door. I stood in the doorway, blocking Milo's path, but he was agitated, rocking back and forth, hooting loudly. Sarah was holding a new, glittery keychain that caught the light. Milo saw it and immediately wanted it. He signed "Gimme" over and over, his movements becoming more frantic. I told him, "No, Milo, that's Sarah's," in a firm voice. That was my mistake. It wasn't just about the keychain anymore. It was about me denying him something. It was about me asserting authority. The entire atmosphere shifted in a nanosecond. The hooting stopped. He went completely silent and looked at me. His face, which I knew so intimately, became an unrecognizable mask of pure rage. His lips peeled back from his long yellow canines, and an odor, a sharp, musky scent of aggression, filled the air. I had just enough time to scream, "Sarah, run!" before he shoved past me with the force of a battering ram, launching himself at her.
The attack was an explosion of primal violence, a whirlwind of teeth and fists. He wasn't just biting, he was tearing, ripping, trying to dismantle her. Sarah's screams were inhuman, sounds of pure agony and terror that will be seared into my brain for eternity. I threw myself at Milo, screaming his name, trying to pull him off her. It was like trying to stop a freight train. He turned on me, and the face I had kissed goodnight 1,000 times was now the face of a monster. He grabbed my hair with one hand and slammed my head against the doorframe. The world exploded in a flash of white pain. Then he went for my face. I remember the feeling of his teeth sinking into my cheek, the crunch of bone, the horrifying sensation of my own flesh being pulled away. He was silent as he attacked me, a focused, deliberate destruction. It was the hands that were the most horrific part. They were so much like human hands, but they were being used with such savage, inhuman intent, gouging and tearing at my eyes and mouth. I thought, my son is killing me. It was the last coherent thought I had before the pain became my entire world. I owe my life to Sarah. Despite her own horrific injuries, she managed to crawl back to her car and call 911. I have no memory of this, only fragmented flashes of what came next. The sound of police sirens growing closer, men shouting, the deafening roar of gunshots, one after another, echoing in my ruined house. I remember a moment of clarity,
lying on my floor, unable to move, seeing Milo's body slumped to the ground. In that instant, amidst the agony and terror, all I felt was a wave of devastating grief. They had killed my child. That was my first thought, even as my own blood pooled around me. The paramedics said later they were shocked I was alive. My injuries were catastrophic. My nose was torn off, my right eye was gone, and my hands were shredded, with several fingers missing. They said the attack on my face was so severe it was as if someone had tried to erase my identity. The monster who did that was the same creature I had rocked to sleep, the one I had taught to sign, "I love you."
I've had over 50 surgeries now. My face is a patchwork of skin grafts and scar tissue, a permanent mask that barely resembles the woman I used to be. I live with chronic pain. I'm blind in one eye. My remaining hand is a mangled claw. But the physical torment is nothing compared to the psychological hell. I am a living monument to my own stupidity and hubris. I tried to defy nature, to mold a wild, powerful animal into a human child, and the result was this waking nightmare. I see Milo's face every time I look in the mirror. Not the baby I loved, but the enraged beast he became. I hear Sarah's screams in my sleep. The guilt is a physical weight that I carry every second of every day. I didn't just lose my face and my health. I lost the son I loved, and I am responsible for the destruction he wrought on me and on my friend. I survived, but I am haunted by the love I had for my own monster. It was a love that nearly devoured me whole.
His name was Shadow, and it was a perfect fit. He was a sleek jet-black domestic shorthair I adopted from a local rescue. He had these stunning emerald green eyes that seemed to hold ancient secrets. Unlike the other cats who clamored for attention, he sat silently in the back of his cage, observing everything with a cool, detached intelligence. I was drawn to his aloofness, his quiet dignity. I wasn't looking for a needy lap cat. I wanted a roommate, a beautiful, independent creature to share my quiet apartment with. For the first few years, that's exactly what he was. He wasn't particularly affectionate, but he had his moments. He would greet me with a silent headbutt when I came home from work, or occasionally decide to grace my lap with his presence, purring like a tiny motor. He was clean, quiet, and stunning to look at. I loved his independence. I thought of his occasional hisses at guests, or his swift clawed swat if you tried to pet him when he wasn't in the mood, as just catitude. He was the king of his castle, and I was his loyal subject, happy to cater to his whims. I saw his possessiveness and his sharp boundaries not as a warning, but as part of his charm.
The incident itself was so trivial, so utterly forgettable, that its consequences feel like a cruel joke. Shadow had a habit of sharpening his claws on the corner of my new sofa. I had bought him multiple scratching posts, which he ignored with regal disdain. One evening, I saw him doing it again and went to shoo him away. I didn't yell or hit him. I just gently tried to nudge him off the couch with my hand. He reacted with a speed and ferocity that shocked me. He whipped around and latched onto the back of my hand, sinking his teeth deep into the fleshy part between my thumb and index finger. The pain was sharp and intense, and I cried out, pulling my hand back. He hissed,
darted off the couch and went to go groom himself under a table, as if nothing had happened. I stood in the kitchen, blood welling up from 4 small, deep puncture wounds. It hurt, but I was more annoyed than anything. "You little jerk," I muttered. I did what anyone would do. I washed it thoroughly with soap and water, slapped a bandage on it, and thought nothing more of it. It was just a cat bite. I'd had cat scratches 100 times before. This was no different, or so I naively believed. By the next evening, something was clearly wrong. My hand had swollen to nearly twice its normal size, the skin stretched tight and shiny. It was hot to the touch, and a deep, throbbing ache had settled into my bones. 4 angry red streaks were starting to snake their way up my forearm, like terrifying little rivers of poison. I felt foolishly stubborn. I took some ibuprofen, propped my arm up on a pillow, and told myself it was just a bad reaction and it would be better in the morning. But that night, I was racked with chills and a raging fever. I was disoriented and weak. The pain in my arm was no longer just a throb. It was an all-consuming fire. I remember looking at the red lines which had now crept past my elbow, and a cold, primal fear gripped me. This wasn't just a simple infection. My body was under attack from within, and the invader had been delivered by my own pet. The cat, Shadow, was sleeping peacefully at the foot of my bed, completely oblivious to the war he had started inside my veins. That sight, his peaceful form contrasted with my escalating agony, filled me with a unique and terrifying sense of dread.
My roommate found me the next morning, barely conscious and rambling. She took one look at my arm, which was now grotesquely swollen and turning a purplish color, and rushed me to the emergency room. The moment the triage nurse saw my hand, her expression turned grave, and I was wheeled back immediately. The ER doctor's words hit me like a physical blow. Severe cellulitis, rapidly progressing to sepsis. The infection has entered your bloodstream. Sepsis. The word hung in the air, clinical and terrifying. I was hooked up to a tangle of IV lines, pumping my body full of powerful, broad-spectrum antibiotics. They told me that bacteria from a cat's mouth, specifically Pasteurella multocida, can be incredibly aggressive, and the deep puncture wounds from the bite had injected it directly into my tissue and bloodstream. The real terror wasn't the memory of a violent attack, but the silent, invisible horror unfolding inside me. I was fighting for my life, not against a predator I could see, but against a microscopic army that was shutting down my organs, one by one. The doctors started talking about surgery, about cutting away the dead tissue, about the possibility of losing my hand. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital, a blurry nightmare of pain, medication-induced delirium, and fear. I underwent 3 separate surgeries, called debridements. The surgeons had to slice my hand and forearm open to clean out the infection and cut away the necrotic, dying tissue. Waking up from each surgery was a new kind of horror. Looking down at my bandaged, mutilated arm, not knowing how much of it was left. The pain was relentless. Nurses had to come in every few hours to pack the open wounds with gauze, a procedure that felt like they were rubbing salt and sandpaper into my very soul. I would lie in that hospital bed, feverish and weak, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how this all started with a simple, stupid cat bite. It was a profound lesson in fragility. My life, my body, my future
was hanging in the balance because of a moment of annoyance with my pet. The animal didn't maul me, but he had delivered a poison that was far more insidious, a creeping death that my own body was struggling to fight.
I survived, but not without permanent consequences. The surgeon saved my hand, but it's a shadow of its former self. It's a landscape of puckered, discolored scars. I have significant nerve damage, leaving parts of it perpetually numb and other parts prone to sharp, shooting pains. I have limited mobility in my thumb and wrist, a constant frustrating reminder of what happened. Shadow, of course, couldn't stay. My roommate took him to a no-kill shelter, and I try not to think about him. The trauma I carry is different from that of a mauling victim. I'm not afraid of animals, but I am terrified of my own body's vulnerability. A paper cut, a splinter, any small break in the skin sends a jolt of panic through me. I have an intimate understanding of how quickly things can go wrong, how the mundane can become monstrous. My pet didn't try to kill me with his teeth and claws in a fit of rage. He almost killed me with a single, casual bite and the unseen bacteria that came with it. I survived an assassination attempt by a microscopic army, and the assassin was my pet.